Welcome to the Let's Get Entrepreneurial podcast, your go-to resource for navigating the world of entrepreneurship. Today, we're delving into a fascinating psychological concept that can be a game changer for entrepreneurs, the flow state. We'll explore how entrepreneurs can achieve and maintain this optimal state of flow, how it can transform their work and their business, and the science behind why this state is so beneficial.
The Let's Get Entrepreneurial podcast is your ultimate launchpad for igniting ideas and skyrocketing your entrepreneurial dreams. Tune in, buckle up, and let's unleash the entrepreneurial spirit within. Your two hosts will be Professor Gary Palin and serial entrepreneur Ryan Budden.
Hello, Professor Palin. How are you?
Doing very well. How are you doing today?
I couldn't be doing better, thanks. We've got a fun one today. We're here to talk about the flow state. Do you know what the flow state is?
I think I live in the flow state at times, sometimes much to my dismay, but very often it helps become more productive.
Perfect. We've got a couple quick definitions here. The technical definition is flow is a positive psychology, also known colloquially as being in the zone. It is a mental state in which a person performing some activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus. It was developed by a psychologist, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He put it a little better. He said flow is the melting together of action and consciousness.
I like that.
I like that a lot.
I always look at it as really a heightened focus and truly immersing yourself in an activity.
I equate it to putting on blinders, the ultimate blinders that are really forcing you to be entirely immersed into the activity that you're doing.
And the term you use, being in the zone, I think really characterizes it in a colloquial term.
The big difference that I find between hyper-focused or being in the zone and truly that flow state is once you get into a flow state, and I'm sure a lot of people listening can identify with this, the sense of time evaporates. You're not going through a checklist of activities that you need to mark off. You're really just doing it. I often have the feeling of, oh, it's dark in here, or, oh, something's happened. I've just been totally unaware with it because I'm so focused on what I'm doing. That's really when I feel like I'm in that flow state.
There's a loss of self-consciousness. And you put your head down and you're so focused with complete concentration. You look up and 3 hours have passed by and you say, well, what the heck happened? Where did that go?
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, also a big emphasis he placed on this because his research was actually in fulfillment or happiness. He really put the caveat that a key principle to being in the flow state is the sense of enjoyment, or he puts ecstasy while you're doing it. So not only are you hyper-focused, you lose that sense of time, but you're also thoroughly enjoying what you're doing. Is that something that resonates with you?
Definitely, absolutely. It's pleasurable to really be able to focus in the resulting accomplishment from being in the flow state. It also improves my decision-making as a result. It improves my creativity, my innovative thinking when I'm in the flow state.
Yeah, so you've sort of bridged that gap. We've described what it is. There are some pretty clear benefits to getting into the flow state. It's the reason there's many, many books on it, podcasts talk about it. It's quite pervasive in modern day culture because of those benefits. That heightened sense of creativity is a big one that people go towards. The innate ability to what seems like make better and faster decisions while you're in that flow state.
Creativity has always been interesting to me when I'm in the flow state, because after the fact, I'll say, where the heck did that idea come from? And it's a result of being in the flow state, I creatively and innovatively came up with solutions to something I've been thinking very deeply about.
That's exactly right. To go back to, again, the original psychologists, there's a huge body of research that says not only are you seemingly enjoying this, but they've analyzed people's brain waves to show that they're getting more pleasure out of the work that they're doing when they enter this flow state as well. So you're making better decisions. You're making those decisions faster, you're making them more creatively, and you actually are getting enjoyment out of the work that you're doing.
And I would also add to that, you're also more productive and efficient.
Absolutely. For me, that work also tends to be more closely aligned with my overarching goals as well. I tend to get less distracted or going down a rabbit hole when I'm in the flow state because somehow I'm able to focus more on that overarching goal and quickly knock off tasks to get towards it as well.
What drives you to be in the flow state, or can you do it consciously?
Right. We've hyped this up. How do you actually make it happen, I think is the question.
Yes.
There's tons of research on how you make it happen. From the conversations I've had, it's pretty individualistic. How people get there can differ from person to person, but there are some commonalities. One of the big commonalities is getting yourself into a situation where your stress or anxiety is low. Prepping your body, whether you're doing some sort of breath work, if you're a list maker, making that list, but whatever you've got to do to get yourself relaxed and low stress.
There's an area that I think of when I tend to get into the flow state is when I have one specific clear goal that I'm focusing on to accomplish. I tend to move into the flow state more readily. Does that happen to you?
Absolutely. If I'm less distracted, less scatterbrained, and I'm more hyper-focused on a single activity, that does allow me to get into it a lot easier.
For those who aspire to go higher in their entrepreneurial journey, we've got something just for you. Coming up next, unleash your entrepreneurial potential with the Janus Entrepreneurial Report. In just a few minutes, discover your unique entrepreneurial strengths, areas for growth, and tailored strategies for success. Whether you're a seasoned business owner or just starting out, the Janus Entrepreneurial Report is your roadmap to entrepreneurial excellence. Visit profspirit.com today and take the first step towards transforming your business vision into reality. The future of your enterprise starts now. Now, let's dive back into our journey of entrepreneurial insights.
Another big one is if I'm working in an environment with not that many distractions. If I'm working at a coffee shop, I find it pretty hard unless I really put some headphones in and blare some music to get into that, because in my peripheral vision, I can still see a lot going on. Even if I'm taking a break and working from a couch, I find it difficult. But if I'm at my desk with my computer in front of me, got a blank wall or window with not much happening, that allows me to get into a lot faster at least.
It's interesting because I tend to be in my lazy boy recliner with my laptop working that I get into the flow state because I'm very relaxed in that situation.
Yeah, you're comfortable. Not a lot of distractions going on. There's not a lot of people walking past you or anything like that.
It was interesting then, I don't know if this happens to you, when there is a major interruption when I'm in the flow state, I feel like my mind has gone from 0 to 100 miles an hour. And I'm cruising at 100 miles an hour, but not even realize I'm doing this. But then if there's something that happens that disrupts me, it's like I have to slam the brakes on and I can't then go back to it and be at 100 miles an hour. I have to build up again.
It's funny. I don't know that I've ever thought about it in those terms, but you are right. When you kind of snap out of it, it is like screech on the brakes. Oh, wait a second. I'm here. I like that. I don't know that I've ever thought about it, but that's so accurate.
When I'm in my office on campus, if the door is open, too many people are walking by, I can't get into that flow state. If I'm working on something that has to be done, I'm crunching, I'll just close the door and there's no interruptions.
Yeah. Another big one that helps me is repetitive time. So around the same time is when I'm trying to get into it. So I have a routine for the morning. And then essentially once I've prioritized my tasks for the day, that's when I sit down, and it's roughly the same time, 9:30 each day. My brain is predisposed to more quickly enter that flow state because I'm doing a repetitive thing day after day after day.
Yeah, those daily routines can be very important. Also, using a structured planning as a framework can be helpful.
A big one for that is time blocking. I've experimented with time blocking quite a lot. If you're really good at getting into the flow state, you can do it in a specific time block because they're typically shorter windows, allowing that interruption, the slowing down and the speeding up so that you're not just zooming at 100 miles an hour, which might be exhausting, could really help with that time blocking.
Occasionally, it'll just happen. Like even this morning, I woke up for some reason at 5 a.m. and couldn't go back to sleep. And I knew I had a lot of work to do because we're at the beginning of the semester. There are many things I had to crunch. I knew we were doing this episode recording. I got into the flow state at 5 a.m. When I was done, I was amazed how much I had got done. I surprised myself.
The book that's trending right now, The 5 a.m. Club, would argue that there's a reason for that 5 a.m. club. There's a reason people are getting up and getting no distractions, getting when their brain is a little sleepier to access the flow state easier. It's one of the principles.
Well, I don't know if I want to be a full-fledged member of the 5 a.m. club, but it did happen to be this morning. And I will tell you, when I did get up, my dog looked at me like I was crazy and then put her head back down and went back to sleep.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a 5 a.m. club member either. I still get up pretty early, but that's too early for me, or at least at this point in my time. Everybody likes being awake at different times, but not for me right now.
Do you have any correlation with preventing burnout and getting into the flow state? Any thoughts on that?
That's interesting. For me, there's definitely a correlation. To go back to Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, it's the enjoyment, right? Getting into that flow state is a really positive feeling. There's a lot of positive association with it. And burnout for me is typically when I'm forcing myself to do activities that are really draining or very difficult for me to sustain. So to answer your question, I think, yeah, absolutely. Getting into the flow state and getting that positive experience would have to decrease burnout. But I'm not a psychologist, so I don't know if there's an actual correlation between those.
I would agree with that. That's been my personal experience. And again, I'm not an expert in flow state either, but I just know that it's a continuum for me to be in a flow state at various times. And the amount of work and productivity always surprises me at the end.
We've really outlined the positives of this and how to get into it. Are there any negatives? Do you think there's any side effects?
With everything else, you can overdo it. So you can deal with mental fatigue if you're continually focusing at that high a level. I can't say I've ever brought myself to that point of no return, but I could imagine doing this because you do need to have some planned times to take breaks. I wouldn't suggest doing this for 10 hours.
Yeah, or power to you if you could possibly do it for 10 hours. The only negative I've ever experienced is because I'm so hyper-focused. We're talking specifically about the world of entrepreneurship, where you have to shift focus every now and then, depending on the role that you're fulfilling in that moment. If you were to deep dive into this, you're really stuck in one role. I don't know that I've ever been in the flow state and then changed tasks entirely. Maybe focusing too much on a specific path, maybe be a negative for our listeners.
If you're not disciplined, you could easily become myopic in one area that's involved with the flow state because it's enjoyable, but other critical tasks that are more tedious tend to get ignored. You have to be careful with that.
Totally. Yeah. Especially creating a gap between that enjoyment of the task and the task that you're not enjoying as much.
It's interesting, as we know with entrepreneurship, you have multiple balls you're juggling, keeping it in the air. The flow state is critical with a very important ball, but at the same time, the other balls are being tossed about, and you don't want to drop those.
That's exactly right. Any final thoughts on the flow state and how people can benefit from it, use it, anything at all?
Well, I would just say stay curious, stay focused, and let the flow state not just be a momentary experience, but become part of your regular entrepreneurial journey.
That's very well put. I'd encourage people to at least give it a try if it's not something that they experience in their everyday lives and see how it can benefit them.
Sounds like a game plan.
Let's get entrepreneurial.
Let's get entrepreneurial.
As we wrap up another episode of the Let's Get Entrepreneurial podcast, we extend our gratitude for your presence and attention. Your dedication to the entrepreneurial spirit fuels our passion for creating this podcast. Check out profspirit.com to discover resources and courses designed specifically for innovators like you. Stay on the cutting edge by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and other platforms as it is released. Until then, keep the entrepreneurial flame burning.